This is Comprehensive Gametree. In this episode, I'm going to explain namespace in specific detail, starting with a little bit of past development, how current development is forked, and then how I plan on reintegrating the fork into previous development. So we're going to look at the PC sheet node here, and what I'm going to do is rename some of these nodes. So I have form text node. Let's rename that to just form text. We'll remove the underscore. We'll rename this to group text, and then rename this to splitter text 1, and rename this one to splitter text 2. Now I'm giving each text node a different name, so I'm going to have an easier time differentiating it later on. So I'm going to open up my little chat here so you can see what I'm describing. In past development, namespace has had one simple syntax. It's just been exclamation, @ symbol, and then you put your node references in, and then you end it with @ symbol exclamation. And this was working okay. However, there was a problem with it being extremely specific. It required extreme specifics in how you referenced your node, which led to problems when a person wanted to move their node around in their game tree to keep it organized, and you had to keep remodifying your references, which really made the game tree not fun to work with. So I made some changes. Now there's an external, which is exclamation ampersand, and then you end that with an ampersand exclamation, or now exclamation equals, and then you end that with an equals exclamation. And this is part of namespace 2.0. In a previous attempt to keep the nodes so that they were context sensitive, they kind of knew where they were inside the game tree, I used exclamation exclamation and also exclamation pound exclamation. Now that still works in the current Traipse game tree, but that's slowly being removed, kind of, but really reintegrated. So I'll show you kind of how things are going to be reintegrated by minimizing the PC sheet that we're working on and opening up this shapeshifter node. That's something I'm developing. Now what the shapeshifter node is going to show is just how the different syntaxes will be used. So I have different syntaxes in the code now, and I'm going to show you what they look like by opening up the abilities grid in design mode. Now you can see the different syntax when you open up the abilities grid in design mode, but you're not going to see it when you open it up in use mode. In use mode, it automatically calculates that data. So we see here, this is referencing with an internal namespace 2.0 reference. It's referencing shapes, but then it uses this syntax right here, which is exclamation quote exclamation. Now this is a new syntax. It's an Easter egg, so it really hasn't been discussed. But this is the idea. If I were to just remove the grid references here, I'll show you what I'm actually doing. And then reopen up the abilities grid. See, what it's doing is it's referencing shape. Well, where's shape? If you look at the strength, you see that shape is actually able to be referenced by shapes. Shape. So this is what namespace 2.0 achieves in that it's a simpler format. What I'm actually doing is using an internal reference to reference shape inside the shapeshifter node. So namespace then looks for shape, the first shape that it finds, and that's in shapes, shape. And that is human. So if I change human to bear, what's going to happen is a couple of things. First, a human's been replaced with bear, and then all of the modifiers, all of the abilities have been modified also. So what I'm actually doing is using this internal reference to create a secondary internal reference that then is used to reference a reference, and then it creates a grid reference with that. I know it's a little confusing, but that's what's going to happen with the old technologies. They're going to be integrated so that you can reference another reference to build a reference. So I'll go ahead and change this back to the old reference. There you go. And I will close this. And we're now using the bear. So this is what this is going to do is, well, it's a shapeshifter. You can add more ability grids to the shapeshifter, and later on we'll see. We'll open up an attack roll here, and then what I'm using is actually the bear. And I can change it to human and use the human. So that's what the new namespace does. Kind of that's how the old namespaces are going to be integrated. Now here's where the real advancement comes from in Namespace 2.0. It's the ability to cut out a lot of the middlemen. Like, if I'm referencing PC Sheet, I then add, I reference PC Sheet. I'm going to use an external reference because this is in chat. So I reference PC Sheet. It starts looking at PC Sheet, and then it will look for the next node. So if I reference PC Sheet and I just reference group text, well, why didn't that work? Because I spelled it wrong. There. Then I will get the context of text. I can then change this to group texts text. If I send that to chat, I get that. If I send it to chat this way, I then get that. I can then do the same thing with form text. And then I get form text, which is this node's data. So that's how Namespace 2.0 is advanced. What it can actually do is then look at form and get form text the same way as if I were to do it this way. It cuts out all of the middlemen. It allows you to cut out all the middlemen, but it allows you to keep the middlemen in so you can be more specific. In the newest beta, there's a lot of advancements with the Gametree. In previous betas, what's been a problem is renaming nodes. If you rename a node, you're going to have invalid references. But with the new namespace, you don't have to worry about that. Or with the new Gametree, you don't have to worry about that as much. In fact, at all. So I'll just rename the group node, and I can just do that. So you're able to rename nodes, and the namespace will still be able to find an accurate reference. So we've gone over a little bit about how namespace has developed and where it's headed towards the future. There's really a simple syntax model for it. It's just each node is given by its name, and then you add colons as a separator. When you add 2 colons, you're then looking for a child of the previous node you're working with. Yet we're also going to be working with internal namespace. Now, internal namespace doesn't work in chat, but it does use the exclamation equals exclamation syntax. At least for now. When it develops, it'll change, but there will be multiple options for internal namespace. So I'm going to show you how an internal namespace works. I'm going to change group text to form text. Now if I send that to chat, I just get form text. And I might get the same thing if I send it to chat this way. No, I don't. I get actually form text, form text. But if I design this and use it as a macro, then I get the namespace parses the data. So internal namespace is going to allow us to move this node now, and we'll always be able to find the correct data. So I'll go ahead and move the PC sheet into my John alternity sheet as a child, and then I will open up group 1, group text, and then run form text. And I still get the form text text. So we've gone over a little bit about the different namespaces, the internal and external reference. What I'm going to go over now is how to use this to create a PC sheet for your own use. So I'm going to open up the grid here, and I'm going to open up this in design mode. Now I'm going to change some of these nodes so that they reflect say a 3.5 edition character sheet. Completed product. So I've renamed some of the labels or some of the rows in here to have just basic names, and then I've added numbers starting at 8. And then what I'm doing here in the third column is I'm using an internal namespace to use a simple formula that helps us find the modifier for our D&D 3.5 character. So I'm just referencing abilities. This is the name of our grid now, and then I'm subtracting 10, and then I cut that in half. And that's really the math behind it. So we'll keep that, and then when I open it up, I get my modifier, I get my abilities modifier, and now it will automatically update and will automatically calculate. This example, let's make an attack roller. I like to put all of my rolls inside a list box. So let's open up our list box to design mode and edit one of these options. Now we'll just call this a strength attack. And what we're going to do then is reference our grid that we just made. So we're going to reference abilities. Now when we're referencing a grid, we reference row first and then column. So we want to reference the abilities strength modifier. Now what this is going to do is when we roll, it's going to roll +5 or plus whatever our strength modifier is. So I'm going to click on home and add 1d20 plus this, and then end with the bracket. So now we have a die roller. And I'll just click OK. Then I'll open up my strength and send. I'll send it as a macro. Oh, because I spelled it wrong. Abilities correctly. I'll now open up the list box and click on strength, and I'll get 1d20 plus our little formula, which ends up being 2, and I rolled an 18, a natural 18, so I got a 20. That's pretty good.